Hi, I'm Michelle Duval. Welcome to Fingerprint for Success and welcome to our YouTube channel. My guess is that you, like most folk, likely consider yourself a pretty good listener, maybe even a really good listener. What I'm about to share with you today is going to turn everything that you thought about listening completely on its head. My guess is that you thought that listening and a good quality of listening was being quiet while the other person speaks. My guess is you also thought it was showing signs of listening, even if you're not. Head nodding, those kinds of indicators that you are hearing something. And my guess is that if you were able to summarize back word for word, that you thought you were doing high quality listening. Well, the findings from 3,500 different case studies actually show that that is only a low level of listening. Now, this topic is very dear to my heart. I've spent the last 25 years or so as a professional coach, actually one of the world's earliest professional coaches, working with senior executives of Fortune 500 companies, working with founders of high growth startups, working with actors, writers, producers, athletes, and many different other folk in between. I went on to write several books in the field of coaching and specifically created numerous different models, specifically actually around listening. So I'm very excited to share these latest findings from the research and also the characteristics that really distinguish you from average to really great listening. Now, of course, there are many benefits to being a very good listener. If you're a leader, it makes your conversations more efficient, it makes decision making much more potent and efficient. If you are wanting to support a team member and wanting to empower them to make good decisions, or wanting to support your partner or your child, being able to listen allows you to help other people to feel supported, loved, and connected. And interestingly, it's not only good for the other person that you're listening to, it's actually really good for you. The distinction is that we know from neuroscience is that when we create a safe space where we're truly helping someone else to be fully heard and understood, we create that trust. And from that safe space of psychological safety or trust, we know from neuroscience that we, the listener, and the other person actually experiences oxytocin. Now, oxytocin is one of those incredible feel-good neurotransmitters, and it leads to dopamine, which of course makes us feel incredible. So listening is not only good for others, but it's actually good for you. And as we've already highlighted, there are many benefits of great listening. As we now dive into what listening actually is, listening is the experience of doing two key things at the basic levels. The first is being able to listen with our ears to what we are actually hearing somebody else say. Now, that could be the sounds that we're hearing, but that's listening specifically for the words. Now, the second level of listening is actually listening with our eyes. I know it sounds crazy, but listening with our eyes allows us to pick up on someone's facial expressions, to be able to pick up on the way and rate that somebody's breathing, the levels of perspiration. It's estimated that around 80% of what we hear is actually through our eyes and what we see. Now, of course, if we go back to what we hear, we're able to also listen for changes in somebody's tone of voice, the speed with which they speak, the tone that they speak with. All of these are the inputs that we actually get that allow us to form the basis of what we call listening. Now, as we've already highlighted earlier, the foundational levels of listening is at a very low level, being able to listen and not speak while the other person's speaking. It's able to give some encourages, yeah, okay, head nodding, smiling. And it's also being able to summarize back. Now, if you thought that that was high-level listening, the research findings found from this 2016 study that that's actually low level. It's actually even poor listening. So as we rise up above, what are the characteristics that distinguish the next level of listening? Now, as we start to go up the levels of listening, one of the characteristics is helping somebody to actually feel good about the experience that they're having with you, to have a positive experience with you. In that process, we're facilitating the conversation. We're facilitating somebody to have greater self-esteem from the experience of engaging with you in a conversation. Now, above that level, the findings found is a level that we refer to as acknowledging somebody's emotions. Now, as I've already highlighted, we can discover someone's emotions by listening to the specific words, or listening to the tone and the timbre and the volume and the speed of somebody's voice, but we can also see it with our eyes. And that's why communication in person, or if at fail-safe on video, gives us a lot more to listen to than just over the phone or just listening to an audio. So the distinction here is that we're going to be able to see something happening on someone's face or listen to their tone of voice that indicates some emotions. And high quality listening, as we start to go up, indicates that you've heard that, you've seen it, you've recognized it, you've acknowledged someone's emotions. It might be as simple as saying, "That sounds to me very difficult as I hear you speaking. I feel really sad as I hear you tell me about that. I'm super excited to hear about this opportunity for you." We're acknowledging our emotions and the other person's emotions. Now, as we go up the next level, this is where the skill and the craft becomes the ability that you have to actually ask questions. Now, I know this is counterintuitive. We thought that high quality listening was being silent and passive, but actually out of these 3,500 case studies, which involve 360-degree feedback from the people who are being listened to, the high quality listeners were able to ask questions that opened up new pathways, that allowed a person to reflect on their own thinking. A question might be, what does that open up for you? What are you learning as you hear yourself discuss this with me? Now, these are, of course, classic coaching style questions, but even if you're a leader, even if you're listening to your child, your husband, wife, lover, whoever, asking these questions allows you to open up new pathways, allows the experience of being heard and you being present to somebody to open up new possibilities. They're enriched from the experience. So listening is much more than just being silent. Now, at the top level, the research found that those who felt most listened to felt like the other party was participating with them and collaborating with them in the conversation, that it was a two-way conversation. Now, the high quality listening did not include an enormous amount from the other person about themselves. Low listening is actually making the conversation all about you. But in the high level listening, it was opening up new possibilities. Now, if you're not coaching, as a leader, it might be adding ideas, brainstorming, adding suggestions. Now, if you're a pure coach, you would never give actual suggestions. You'd want to facilitate those coming out of your coachee. But if you're a leader, a team leader, you're working with your child, you're working with your peers, and you're working with your partner, being able to add ideas and suggestions and making a co-creative conversation helped people to feel the most listened to. So as we step back from that, as you can see, low-level listening is and does include head nods, It includes being able to be quiet and not speaking over the other person. It includes being able to summarize, but that's at a low level. As we go up the levels, we help another person to develop self-esteem, to feel empowered. We actually acknowledge their emotions. We be a witness to them. And we do this with our eyes and also with our ears and also with what we feel inside of our body. And high-level listening is actually collaborating and co-creating with the other person to be able to find new solutions, new possibilities, being enriched from the experience of being listened to. Now you might say, well, what if the other person I'm talking to is a really crap listener? My guess is that from what you've just heard, most of the time you'll be interacting with people who don't know these nuances. And of course, this was your competitive advantage. It will set you apart in terms of being a listener. It will create more efficient conversations. It will help to build more bonds in the relationships. It'll also help you to feel better about yourself, and others will feel better in your presence. But if someone else isn't a great listener, you can be the model. It's very hard when someone's talking over the top of you, cutting you off, disregarding your emotions and actually ignoring and not co-creating with you. But if that happens, you can do what one of the characteristics that came out from the research is to actually offer feedback. One of the key findings from the research in 2016 was that by offering feedback, we are showing that we're listening. So we could offer feedback and we could say, sorry, Sally, I'm really wanting to share more with you, but I'm finding it difficult to be able to talk about my emotions. Is it okay with you if I share some of my feelings about this topic with you? The frame of asking permission invites somebody else further into the conversation with you. It also lets them know what your needs are in the conversation. Obviously, there are going to be times where it's very difficult, you're in protracted situations and it's not as always easy to be able to be the ideal listener. And my biggest tip here is to really focus on the emotional tone of the message and to be able to respond to the emotions and to be able to ask questions. These are the qualities that open up new neural pathways for the other person and create that feelings and the experience of oxytocin, and importantly helps the other person to feel really heard. Now, of course, at Fingerprint for Success, you have the opportunity to be able to start for free. You can jump on in and work with Coach Marlee, our personal AI coach, and you can work on your listening skills. We look forward to your comments, your feedback, the topics that you most want to hear from us about, and I wish you an amazing, amazing day as you experiment over the next days and weeks and months with your listening skills.